Let's bring Gaurav and Brett into the show now. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Good to have you both here on NDTV. Gaurav, to you first. Now, the South African cricketers said earlier in that press conference in a show of unity which Hashim Amla addressed that this charge, according to them, is a joke. But just wanted to clarify the entire position here. If sticky saliva does in fact change the condition of a ball and how much it swings, then should it not be investigated no matter what the situation?
Oh, absolutely. And I think England have, in 2005 Ashes, Marcus Trescothick came out and said that. And he said we were applying mint onto the ball, which had some effect and made it swing or made it reverse swing. So clearly there's been an effect on the ball. Now, the ICC have come out and said, and that's what South Africa's defence is, that there's no proof that the ball ended up swinging so much. But clearly it's what Hashim Amla has come out to say, and the South African team standing behind him, that is really sort of upset and almost given sort of the arrogance feel to the Australian public, and them to say it's completely a joke, that just shows the mindset of the South African team, and that's really upset the Australian public.
All right, let's get another opinion. Now let's go over to Brett for more on this. Brett, 100% match fine then for du Plessis, but are you surprised that he wasn't suspended for one test?
I don't think so. I spoke to an Australian player today who described the entire matter as a storm in a teacup, and the law that Faf du Plessis has been found guilty of, Law 42, allows that players can polish the ball as long as no artificial substance is used. And that player made the point to me that every player on the field wears sunscreen. That's an artificial substance that finds its way onto the ball. So that law is one that every player is violating. The ICC probably need to find a way to either enforce this law properly or ignore the fact that certain artificial substances end up on the ball. So the player made the point to me that he didn't think du Plessis would be suspended, and that's the way it's turned out.
All right, Gaurav, back to you now, since you're a journalist yourself. What did you make of the way the Channel 9 reporter was pretty much manhandled, really, by the South African security personnel at the Adelaide airport? If Faf didn't want to give a comment or a reaction to those questions, then it could have been handled much better, you think?
Look, absolutely. I mean, but as from a judge, there's two ways of looking at this. There's a player's point of view, and I'm sure the players don't like having a mic in their face. Now, South Africa's statement was that they had been told, that Channel 9 reporter, just prior to having that footage, that no, to stay away from Faf. But from a journalistic point of view, all Faf had to say was like, no comment, it's with the ICC, and the matter would have moved on. And because Faf didn't want to say that, and with the security and the team manager sort of intervening, that's what's caused this bust up and caused a big issue out of it. But clearly, from a journalistic point of view, journalists are there to get stories out of people. We want to comment. We want to see if Faf is willing to say anything. All it needed for Faf to say, no comments with the ICC, you guys know. That's where the issue should stand. And I think that's where the border has been crossed, and that's where there's this grey area between a journalist and what a player would have to say about this issue.
All right, Brett, you know, Hashim Amla, while addressing journalists earlier, also said that the timing of the charge against du Plessis is weird, and it might just be a case of sour grapes for some people. What did you make of that?
Sure, but I think the point to note here is that the charges were in no way brought by the Australian team. The footage that came to light after the match came from one of the TV stations here in Australia, and the Australian team had no input into what eventually transpired. So, yeah, you can make the case from a distance that sour grapes is behind what happened, but in this case, the Australian team was totally innocent.
Right. Also, Brett, an Aussie cricketer like Matthew Hayden has also questioned the charge. Now, most cricketers, of course, chew gum on a regular basis. Some might have some other mint like sweets while they are playing. If the ICC feels that this can perhaps affect the condition of the ball, maybe the player should be banned from having any of this on the field.
But I'll go back to what the Australian player said to me today. How do you, for example, prevent sunscreen ending up on the ball? There's no way you can outlaw sunscreen or hair gel or any artificial products like that do find their way onto the ball. So this is definitely something the ICC needs to look at. The law as it's written is unenforceable.
Brett, how much of an impact do you think this particular incident will have on the third test in Adelaide? Can we perhaps expect fireworks now from the Aussies?
Well, from an Australian point of view, you'd certainly hope so, with obviously quite a number of changes to the team from Hobart. Obviously, since the test match, the chairman of selectors, Rod Marsh, has quit his post. He was going in the middle of 2017 anyway. He's brought that date forward and gone immediately. Obviously, a number of changes. Matthew Renshaw in at the top of the order with David Warner, Peter Hanscom and Nick Maddinson in the middle order. So it'll be very interesting to see how those new players take to Test cricket. And of course, there's plenty of pride on the line for Australia. They've never ever suffered a clean sweep in a Test series in Australia. And Steve Smith currently sitting on 5 consecutive Test match losses. No Australian captain has lost 6 in a row. So certainly plenty to play for the Australians in Adelaide.